Good evening from Holyrood. Coming up on tonight's Representing Border. Cuffed in court after his crimes were read out. We bring you details of the corrupt actions of the SNP's former chief executive, from the brazen to the bizarre.
The accused purchased an OXO Good Grips two-piece silicone egg poacher set on the 7th of July 2020 using £23.98 of SNP funds.
And it's a first for Holyrood, as often overlooked MSPs get the chance to quiz the First Minister. Also on the programme,
27 hours.
Mine was 30 hours.
How much time do you spend on your phone? As ministers move to ban them from classrooms, we find out what people at this youth club in Galashiels think. In the end, it looked like Peter Murrell was preparing to drive off into the sunset. A court narrative into how the former SNP chief executive embezzled £400,000 from his party described that camper van stocked with luxury goods and travel guides bought with nationalist funds. The papers also reveal he was able to sign off his own massive expenses and duped auditors with false invoices. Matty Sutton has this report.
Once one half of Scotland's most powerful couple, this morning the former chief executive of the SNP was brought from prison in handcuffs to listen to the details of the 12-year spending spree that put him behind bars. The court released this photograph of his biggest buy, this £125,000 motorhome bought with money donated to the party and membership fees in December 2020. It sat on his mother's drive in Dunfermline until April 2023, when it was seized by police. Inside they found molten brown toiletries and other luxury items. It had only been driven 4 miles.
After its purchase, the accused suggested to other party employees that the motorhome could have been used for campaigning purposes, but it was not. The day after he had ordered the motorhome, the accused purchased from Amazon 3 guides to inspirational journeys around Scotland, England and Wales, and Ireland in a camper van or motorhome.
Last Monday, Mr Murrell pleaded guilty to embezzling more than £400,000 of party funds. Today, the court heard how the estranged husband of former SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon got away with it for so long. A statement agreed between Mr Murrell and prosecutors said he'd had control over the party's principal bank account throughout his more than 2 decades in the top job. In August 2010, he began using bank transfers and a charge card to buy things that were not for party use, covering his tracks by falsifying invoices and account records. This robotic lawnmower cost £3,070. Mr Murrell described it in the accounts as legal fees. And this silver wine coaster, costing £3,500, went down as leadership expenses. Both items were found when police searched the home he shared with Miss Sturgeon in April 2023. Did you know Peter Murrell had so much control over the party finances that things weren't being checked?
Well, obviously not, because it's...
Why not?
I've explained to many of you already that for 20 years I was not a serving office bearer in the Scottish National Party. So I had no line of sight on these issues because I wasn't a member of the democratic machinery of the party other than being a participant at party conference. Now I know I was a senior government minister for all that time, but I didn't have party responsibilities. Systems that were in place were circumvented. They were undermined. They were the victims of falsification of information and miscoding of information to deceive.
Opposition parties say wider questions remain.
We still need a parliamentary inquiry. There are many, many questions to be answered, and it isn't about redoing an investigation quite properly done by the police. It's about all the other questions of governance, of the state being too close to the party, of whether the court hearing before the election being delayed was a significant factor as well.
Well, there's one thing that's for sure, it's Peter Murrell is no criminal mastermind. He left crumbs right along the trail of what he was up to, and it's quite clear that there's questions that still need to be answered as a result of what we've seen in recent hours.
Mr Murrell left court to be taken back to prison. He's expected to be sentenced later this month.
Well, Matty joins me now to tell us more about a remarkable day at the High Court in Edinburgh. Matty, you were in the room where it happened. What was it like?
Kieran, it was quite remarkable. We had Peter Murrell, the former chief executive of the SNP, arriving in handcuffs, brought into the court. He sat down, the cuffs were taken off, and he sort of sat with this neutral face, polite, just stared ahead. There were rows of the press sat behind him behind a glass panel, and he just sort of stared and listened to this statement, which was basically details of everything that went on in that 12-year period when he was embezzling £400,000 from the party that he was running, and there was a lot of detail in there. I mean, for the Jaguar he bought for £81,000, he created a fake invoice and changed the name of the car dealership. So we heard about how he was doing it, how he was getting away with it. For others, he made up things in the SNP's accounting software. So 2 watches worth £9,000 in total, recorded as event merchandise, and there were nearly 400 Amazon buys, a lot of them delivered to his house. So the scale of what we were hearing was huge, as well as this imagery around who was a really important person in Scottish politics.
You've highlighted some of the examples there and the scale of what was being stolen. Was there anything that jumped out at you, either in terms of specific items that Peter Murrell had stolen, or just kind of reference there again, just the lengths at which he went to disguise his crimes?
I mean, we'd heard a lot about some of those key items. The motorhome especially has been in there, and the court today released photos, which we've seen in my piece before, which was, new for us to actually see what was going on there, and that it was stocked up with luxury items. But I think the thing that really stood out was the fact that he had this complete control over the administration of the party. So there were things like he checked his own and everybody else's expenses. So even though there was an electronic system for submitting expenses, he said to colleagues that he couldn't use it. So he was able to then submit his own without receipts. And the items he was buying as well, I think, struck me. Many of them were very mundane purchases, sort of day-to-day things that he was using the SNP account to pay for.
So is this the end of it then for the SNP, or is there more trouble, difficult questions ahead for the party and indeed for Peter Murrell's estranged wife, the former SNP leader and First Minister Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, we heard in court that SNP staff didn't know what Mr Murrell was up to. The First Minister today as well said he didn't know. I mean, he says he's completely overhauled the system, the governance of the party in the wake of this. So there now are stringent checks on every penny that's spent through those party accounts. But for more than a decade, there was this system in place, which essentially allowed one man at the top of the party to buy £400,000 worth of things for himself, and for a long time get away with that. And there was a lot of stuff. Now, Nicola Sturgeon, she's obviously been interviewed this week as well, and said again that she didn't know and she didn't suspect anything. She feels deceived and betrayed. John Swinney feels deceived and betrayed. He's said no to Parliament investigating this further, to looking into that, although that is what opposition parties are really calling for. They think that needs to be, there's questions that still remain. And to be honest, I think the scale of this, it's not going away anytime soon, and certainly not before Peter Murrell is sentenced, which is expected to happen later this month.
And we'll be covering it every step of the way. For now, Matthew Sutton, thanks very much. Now, it wasn't just the High Court that saw a significant moment in Scotland's political story today. Here at Holyrood, the first ever backbench version of First Minister's questions took place. Greg Hoare reports.
Strolling up Holyrood's glass corridor, the media's focus is normally on party leaders. Today, though, backbench MSPs took centre stage. And the first edition of this First Minister's Questions with a Twist proved popular.
Because we have had more questions for a First Minister's Question session than ever before. in the history of this Parliament, I have been advised.
The first question came from an SNP backbencher.
Yesterday, TV regulator Ofcom announced it had approved controversial plans to end STV's dedicated news coverage for the north of Scotland. These plans are deeply unpopular and mean my constituents have lost a news institution that they've trusted for decades.
I have written to Ofcom and to STV to urge them once again to ensure that they are meeting their obligations to audiences and to dedicated journalists, and reiterate my opposition, my wholehearted opposition to the decision that Ofcom has made, which I think is ignorant of the needs and the circumstances of the north and the north east of Scotland.
Local Conservative MSP Rachel Hamilton had the final question. She accused the government of delaying publishing its energy strategy and therefore continuing its presumption against the development of new oil and gas fields.
Over the weekend, the SNP's new Energy Minister said the Scottish Government's energy strategy may not be ready until the end of the year. This is a shocking dereliction of the duty of this SNP government. Oil and gas workers are losing their jobs now, and Aberdeen is suffering damaging anti-oil and net zero policies by Ed Miliband.
Let me say to Rachel Hamilton that the Scottish Government has a very clear position which is set out in relation to oil and gas, which has been communicated by me on multiple occasions. And at the heart of the question that Rachel Hamilton put to
Mr.
me...
Flynn, you're not in Westminster now.
...was her... At the heart of the question that Rachel Hamilton put to me was decision-making by Ed Miliband. Now, I just want to clarify, Ed Miliband is not a member of my government.
Earlier, another Borders MSP, Callum Kerr, also raised energy security, pointing to the UK government watering down sanctions on Russian oil. The UK government says it's simply phasing the new sanctions in and putting more pressure on Russia.
Keir Starmer will reward Putin by bringing in jet fuel made from Russian oil. Can the First Minister today reaffirm his government solidarity with Ukraine?
I reaffirm my strong support for the people of Ukraine, my strong support for the sustainability of our energy industries to make sure that the energy needs of our country can be met by the activities that we undertake here in Scotland.
Here at Holyrood, party leaders will get their turn to question John Swinney on Thursday.
Gregor. Now, mobile phones are effectively being banned from Scotland's schools. In a statement to Holyrood, Education Secretary Mary McCallan urged councils to move to bar the devices from campuses while a government consultation takes place on a new law prohibiting scrolling, messaging and calling in places of learning. It follows intense debate over the impact phones are having on, in particular, classroom behaviour. Oliver Wright reports.
This youth club in Galashiels gives teenagers here a safe space to socialise and grow up together. But a big part of the world they're growing up in is online. In their pocket or hand, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So how long were you on your screen for last week?
27 hours.
Mine was 30 hours.
And what were you doing?
I was on TikTok.
Snapchat.
Yeah, on the phone with friends.
12 hours and 19 minutes.
That's over half the day. Does that shock you?
No. Not really.
No, you're not shocked?
I thought it was going to be higher than that.
Like it or not, smartphones have become embedded in young people's lives. But campaigners have long been calling for school to be a phone-free zone. In 2024, the Scottish Government gave head teachers more powers to impose stricter rules on phone use. But there are parents who want to see more.
I would like to see the new Education Minister coming out, being a new parent herself and protecting all of our young people and children in a secondary school environment where they are ultimately there to enjoy learning and not feel the pressures of social media.
This became a flagship policy during the election campaign, with every party committing to a ban. Today at Holyrood, the new Education Secretary promised to begin a consultation to cut phones out of Scotland's schools.
We continue to hear concerns about classroom disruption, where restrictions are absent, and wider impacts on pupils' well-being from excessive screen time, exposure to harmful online content, and the effects of online bullying. Presiding Officer, that's why we will shortly publish a consultation on legislation to make our learning environments phone-free.
But for these young people, getting them to hand over their phones might not be that easy.
I just won't go to school. Well, if my mum's texting me, I don't know what she's going to say. If she's not home and I need to go somewhere else, I don't know what I don't know where to go.
Be a good idea, but it's not at the same time in case if happened, but a teacher's not there.
There is no blanket policy in place in the Scottish borders, with each school having their own rules. It's a similar picture in Dumfries and Galloway. That could soon change as the Scottish Government looks to implement national restrictions.
Oliver Wright. Well, this afternoon, the Public Health Minister led a debate on the Government's Summer of Sport programme. Marie Todd confirmed a £20 million fund would be used to provide free and low-cost activities across Scotland during the warmer months. But Borders MSP Rachel Hamilton said poor public transport could prevent children in rural areas from taking part.
We announced significant additional investment of £20 million in the 26-27 budget to deliver a nationwide Summer of Sport programme, a programme that's designed to make this a truly transformational summer for children and young people right across Scotland.
In rural areas, kids at school can't get the bus transport to get to the activities and the events and the pools and the assets. What more can the Scottish Government do to support the local authorities to ensure that they do become inclusive for everyone?
In terms of the bus travel, of course, we're piloting the £2 bus fare cap in the Highlands and Islands, and it's been transformative. And we've seen an increase in the number of bus routes that are participating. So once that's rolled out all over Scotland, I think that will make a significant difference to the opportunities that young people have.
Now, sticking to the sports theme, and a local MSP has said he'll put forward a members' bill to end the ban on booze at Scottish football matches. Reform UK's Jamie Langan wants Holyrood to lift restrictions on drinking alcohol at games in time for the Euro 2028 tournament, which has been co-hosted by the United Kingdom and Ireland. I sat down with him earlier on. Jamie Langan, why do you want to end the ban on alcohol at football games in Scotland?
Because I think we can see there's clear scope for a safe match-going environment where football fans can enjoy the same rights and liberties as rugby fans, as concert goers. I think it's a very narrow minority that isn't infected by drinking in stadiums that causes issues, and we've got a safe environment, and it's something I think we could roll out across the country.
So you say that and talk about it being a narrow minority that causes trouble. This was obviously brought in, this ban, after the Hampden riot of 1980. It's been for a long time. Do you accept in the first instance that this was about safety and was brought in with good intentions?
Of course, absolutely, but I think you have to look at the match-going environment of Scotland in the 1980s to where we are now. In the 1980s, we had the scourge of football hooliganism, whereas football is policed in a very safe manner now. Match-going trends have changed, and we can see that grounds right across Scotland as a safe environment, normal, hard-working Scots, law-abiding people, bringing families, and I think we've seen a real change in those 40 or so years since.
So not a worry that we're regressing, though. Some football fans at games, there's been pitch invasions recently, people in Glasgow city centre where there's been trouble, riots, broken glass after multiple years recently.
A very narrow minority of fans are doing this. The vast majority of match-going fans are well behaved and support their club in a positive way. And where we have seen challenges, it's often due to the fact people are, whether it's bringing in spirits or Class A drugs to grounds, it is not due to the fact of someone having a half-time pint.
So you don't think that there would be the potential with alcohol on site to make this worse?
Not at all, and in fact I think it might mitigate some of that. It will mitigate challenges around people drinking in excess before games, and it may even mitigate some of those more dangerous behaviours in grounds involving spirits or Class A drugs.
Have you carried out any research into this?
Well, there's been a number of trials. I think there's 6 clubs so far right across the country. There's been a very positive reception to that. The stakeholders on that side are very keen to push this forward, and I think there is an honest debate to be had, whether that's working with Police Scotland, the football authorities and the government to make sure there's a safe match-going environment where people can enjoy themselves.
Can we say then that if the ban was to be ended, if alcohol was to be served in football games and there was trouble, you then wouldn't criticise the Scottish Government on the back of it?
No, not at all. I think there has to be nuance in the system where Police Scotland are safe to police high-risk fixtures when they might arise. But fundamentally, this catch-all blanket ban on match-going fans at all levels of the game simply isn't fit for purpose.
So it might be, just from what you're saying there, it might be that some games, perhaps, if they're high risk, there's
and
not
we
alcohol
can see this at the moment. There is already a process where games can be designated as being a higher risk of whether that's crowd trouble, whether that's violence, and there are already appropriate measures put in place. I don't see why this couldn't be a case of where we have a pragmatic system that is not just a punishing blanket ban across clubs in Scotland.
This was raised last year as a, as a potential issue, something that may be lifted. At that time, the First Minister said he wasn't minded to lift the ban. He says the current system works and he's got no plans to change it. What would you say to that?
Well, I think it depends on what way it is working. We do have incredibly safe grounds in Scotland. We all want to see that. But is it working for smaller clubs who are feeling the economic pinch, and this would be a great source of revenue? I think there is expansion and there is ambition to be had. There's a difference between simply setting for the status quo or providing the best possible environment for Scottish football fans and Scottish football clubs.
I suppose on that economic point, I'm sure clubs would absolutely welcome the extra revenue that would come with this. Is there a danger, though, that this could harm local pubs around football grounds?
I don't think so. I think it's very much a complementary process. It's people enjoying a pint at half-time, whether it's in the concourse during the match, and then that complements back into the local economy, and people, enjoy local pubs before and after. And again, in a responsible environment, because at the moment we have this criminalisation of drinking around stadiums. It's people doing it, whether it's a hip flask or a bottle of spirits. This is a much safer environment that complements the broader hospitality environment.
This is obviously at quite an early stage here.
Of course.
What kind of cross-party discussions have you had? How confident are you of getting support for
There
this?
are people in every party who love and support Scotland's football clubs and want to support them going forward. So there are people right across the chamber, I'm confident, who will want to work on this. And that's also working externally, whether it's with the footballing authorities, Police Scotland. We need to make sure all views, including those who might not be minded for a change, are taken into account to make sure it's a system that would work for everyone in Scotland.
If this ban was to be lifted, would you be enjoying a drink at the game?
Quite possibly.
Who would you be going to see? What would you be having? What would be your tipple at the football?
Well, I think whether it's any club across South Scotland, a pint of Tennent's on the concourse wouldn't go amiss at half-time.
Okay, well, we'll see if you manage to realise that dream.
Brilliant.
For now, Jimmy Lyon, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And that's all from us for tonight. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow, and I hope you can join us then. But for now, thanks for watching, and good night.